The ocean was a sheet of steel beneath the rising sun, calm, deceptive, endless. The massive carrier USS Valiant cut through its surface like a blade, engines humming with quiet power. Hundreds of men and women moved in rhythm across the deck, every motion precise, every glance focused. But among them stood one woman who didn't belong there anymore, not according to the Admiral's orders. Lieutenant Commander Elena Reyes stood at the edge of the deck, her uniform crisp, her heart shattering beneath it. She had served 10 years in the Navy, survived storms, battles, and the crushing loneliness of the deep sea. Yet it was not an enemy that broke her. It was her own command. She had been the Navy's golden officer, brilliant in tactics, fearless under pressure, and known for a decision during a night operation that saved 70 lives. But the same courage that once earned her medals now made her a threat to men who wore rank as armor for their ego. She had questioned an order during a classified mission, a maneuver that, in her analysis, would have caused a deadly collision between vessels. She'd been right, but instead of being thanked, she'd been quietly marked as insubordinate. The Admiral, a man named Jonathan Pierce, stoic, towering, and known for his obsession with discipline, saw her defiance as rebellion. The order came without warning. She was to be removed from the carrier and reassigned to a ground post, a bureaucratic exile for a woman who belonged at sea. When the message reached her, the sound of the jet engines above blurred into nothing. She stood motionless in the corridor as officers passed by, their eyes filled with quiet sympathy but no courage to speak. The humiliation was public. Her bags were packed under supervision, her access codes revoked. The place that had been her home, her identity, her entire world, had turned cold and mechanical, as if it had erased her existence overnight. That night, as she prepared to leave, Elena went to the observation deck one last time. The sea was black under the stars, and the wind carried a sharp chill. She looked out at the horizon, her throat tight. She had always believed the ocean was a living thing, vast, unforgiving, but honest. It had no politics, no lies, just truth. "You gave me everything," she whispered, tears glinting under the red deck lights. "And now you're all I have left." The next morning, a helicopter took her from the carrier. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Days turned into weeks. Elena's new post was at a naval logistics base in Guam, far from the heart of action. She buried herself in data and reports, her uniform spotless, her face expressionless. But every night she stared at the sea beyond the shore, remembering the carrier's hum, the roar of fighter jets, and the voice of her crew. She tried to convince herself that duty was enough, that her oath still meant something even if her spirit had been buried beneath silence. But deep down she felt a pulse, a restless beat of something unbroken, something waiting. Then one morning the silence of her exile was shattered. It began with a coded message, a distress signal faintly intercepted off the Pacific, just within the naval grid where the USS Valiant was conducting exercises. The signal carried her old call sign, Echo 7. It was impossible. That code had been deactivated the day she was removed. The duty officer thought it was a glitch, but Elena's instincts screamed otherwise. She traced the source manually, her fingers trembling as the coordinates appeared. It was coming from deep beneath the ocean floor, a classified area known for submarine operations. She immediately recognized the pattern. It wasn't a glitch. It was an emergency transmission buried under encrypted layers, a signal that only someone from her old tactical team would know how to hide. Someone was calling for her. When she brought the data to her commanding officer, he dismissed it. "You're reading ghosts, Commander. That signal isn't active. Forget it." But she couldn't. She'd worked with those encryption patterns. Someone out there was in trouble, and they'd risked everything to reach her. That night, she made a decision that would end her career if she was wrong. She contacted an old friend in communications, a quiet, loyal soul who had served under her on the Valiant. Together, they decoded the message completely. The signal wasn't just a distress call. It was a warning. Something had gone wrong near the carrier's fleet operation zone. A submarine had gone silent, a nuclear submarine under Admiral Pierce's command. Its failsafes were offline. Its position was unstable. And the message ended with one chilling line. "Surface order denied. Pierce overridden failsafe. Immediate danger to reactor integrity." Elena's blood ran cold. She understood instantly. The Admiral had made a critical error. He was refusing to surface the sub even as its systems failed, likely to avoid public embarrassment or a security breach report. He was risking hundreds of lives, and no one aboard the carrier would dare contradict him. No one but her. She didn't hesitate. She commandeered a small patrol vessel under the pretense of a test run. The moment she cleared the base perimeter, she accelerated toward the coordinates. Rain lashed across the deck, lightning tearing through the dark sky. The sea rose like a living wall, but she pressed on, eyes fixed on the radar. The faint trace of the submarine pulsed on her screen, flickering, dying. She whispered to herself, "Hold on. I'm coming." Hours passed in chaos. The storm howled. Communication links broke. But when the clouds finally parted, the black silhouette of the USS Valiant appeared on the horizon. Majestic, unyielding, and unaware that the ocean below it was seconds from disaster. Beneath it, sensors screamed a warning. The nuclear submarine's reactor was approaching meltdown. Elena's heart pounded as she sent emergency override codes to the sub. Codes she had memorized long ago, but was never supposed to use again. The system rejected her twice. On the third attempt, the screen went white, then green. Manual override accepted, the sea roared. And then against every standing order, the water erupted. The massive black hull of the submarine broke the surface with thunderous force, waves cascading off its deck. The carrier's alarms blared. The crew rushed to stations, faces frozen in shock. The Admiral himself stormed to the command bridge, disbelief twisting his face. "Who gave that order?" he demanded. And then he saw her, standing on the patrol vessel's deck, soaked to the bone, saluting him across the waves. For a long moment, the two stared at each other, the man who banished her, and the woman who had just saved his fleet from nuclear disaster. The silence between them was heavier than the storm. He had once believed discipline mattered more than judgment, but now staring at her, he understood the difference between authority and leadership. She hadn't disobeyed him for pride. She had done it because her conscience refused to stay silent. Later, when the investigation concluded, it confirmed what Elena already knew. The submarine's cooling systems had failed due to a corrupted command sequence. Her intervention had prevented a catastrophic chain reaction. The official report called it a situational irregularity, but the sailors had another name for it, a miracle. When the USS Valiant next departed, its crew lined the deck to watch a small vessel pass by. On its deck stood Elena Reyes, head held high, sunlight breaking over her shoulders. The Admiral himself stepped out to the bridge wing, his cap in hand, and gave her a slow, solemn salute. No words were spoken. None were needed. The sea knew. That day, Elena realized something profound. Being a soldier wasn't about obeying blindly. It was about protecting life, even when it meant standing alone. She had been banished from the carrier, stripped of her command, and forgotten by the system she served. But in the end, her courage had surfaced stronger than steel, deeper than the ocean itself. And somewhere in the wind that swept across the Pacific, it carried a quiet truth. That one act of integrity, even in exile, can echo across the tides forever. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Legends of History. Your support helps us bring more untold stories of courage and honor to life. Special request to comment. Share your thoughts below. What did you feel when the submarine surfaced against all odds? Your words mean more than you know.